Listen. Listen very, very carefully. I killed Paul Allen. And I liked it.
Hey, what is up? It is Lucky Punch Sports back for UFC 312, going over the full card and my betting picks for the main card. But I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Pound for pound, this is the worst pay-per-view I've ever seen, and the worst since DDP vs. Sean last year at 297. I want to be excited for this card, but I just can't. Either way, enough talking about it, let's get it. In the first fight on the main card is an unranked welterweight bout between Jake, the Celtic Kid Matthews, and Francisco, the Fountain of Youth Prado. And Prado is only 22 and 1-2 in the UFC, where the Celtic Kid, Jake Matthews, fights his 21st UFC match against the 22-year-old. And I won't pretend to be all excited for this card, but there is some interesting fights. This is one of them. The young Prado debuted in 2023 in the UFC with a decision loss against the Aussie Jamie Mullarkey. Prado has been very aggressive and risky with his striking, and that earned him his only UFC finish. But a vet like Matthews can capitalize by taking his time and looking for an opening through a submission or by KO. Matthews has lasted 10 years in the UFC by avoiding getting finished. It seems simple, but it's not. However, he has failed to establish himself in the division. Prado might have the explosive advantage with very, very fun striking, but Matthews can outlast Prado's aggression, stay smart, and take a decision win here as the vet, showing off that experience as the favorite. And another unranked bout in the light heavyweight division between Jimmy the Brute Crute and Rodolfo Trator Bellato, and this is another Aussie on the card in Jimmy Crute, who has slowed from his fast UFC start, and he hasn't won in his last 4 fights. Crute is coming into the fight with Bellato, who's 1-0 in the UFC after knocking out former prospect Ihor Potieria. Although Crute is coming in as the underdog, with Bellato being on a much better run than he is, Bellato has been finished before he was in the UFC. Vitor Petrino beat him twice and knocked him out, but Crute has been on the receiving end of the knockouts more than dishing out the knockouts in recent years. So I'm not loving recent activity from Crute, but I wouldn't have too much faith in Bellato. Crute has a good base and decent takedowns, but has lacked success recently. I'd pick Bellato to either find a late knockout or a decision win through the scorecards and get his second UFC win as the favorite. And yet another unranked matchup, but a fun one in the heavyweight division, which has been going through a lot recently. Rosenstrike just got cut. Tuivasa should be cut. It's a weird spot, but there's a very bright prospect here in Taliesin Chikau Teixeira and Justin Badman Tafa. And Justin Tafa and his fellow fat heavyweight brothers have been in real trouble recently. There was a time when I had serious stock in Junior Tafa, Justin Tafa, and Tai Tuivasa. Unfortunately, some heavyweights do have actual talent, besides swinging really hard for about a minute and then completely gassing out and giving up. Tafa has shown talent, but just like his brother, they are some of the worst to bet on. Watching them gas out while desperately begging them to swing is one of the most frustrating things in the UFC, where Taliesin Teixeira looked to be one of the brightest prospects in the DWS last season. Standing at 6'7" with an 83-inch reach, Teixeira was given a much smaller can to knock out, and although he had a highlight reel KO, he was tagged quite a bit by the smaller heavyweight. He had his hands down, something he has to be careful with the very aggressive Tafa. Teixeira looks to be one of the most promising heavyweights in the division before his debut, and Tafa looks to be a perfect punching bag that will tire out from the unrelenting giant across from him. Teixeira is used to first-round knockouts, but I predict Tafa will put up a better fight before he gasses and will clip Teixeira a few times. And if Teixeira fights smart, he will outlast Tafa, piece him up from range, and in the second or third round, land a ton of damage. I'm a big fan of Teixeira from the Contender Series and for the future of the heavyweight division at his height, but do not look past a very heavy-handed Tafa to land a lucky shot with those wild arching hooks. That being said, I'm taking Teixeira by KO within 2 rounds. And now the co-main. We finally have some ranked fighters and a champion at that for the strawweight belt. We have Zhang Magnum Weili versus the #1 contender, Tatiana Unbreakable Suarez. 7-0 in the UFC against 9-2 for Zhang Weili. And Weili is defending her belt for the 3rd time, and she may have her hardest fight since the Namajunas losses. Suarez is undefeated in the UFC, and she may be called unbreakable, but she's only fought twice in the last 6 years with a ton of very unfortunate injuries. She's beaten Grasso, Esparza, and Andrade, and now faces her biggest challenge yet for the belt. Zhang Weili is finally fighting for the first time in almost a year, but against Tatiana Suarez, who's not very active. She dominated Lemos at 292 and looked great again at 300, and she's one of my favorite women's fighters, and I think she's the best women's fighter in the world in my eyes. Suarez will need a Herculean effort to beat Weili, and to be quite frank, I'm pretty surprised Suarez is coming in as the favorite, someone who hasn't fought in that long with all those injuries. But either way, Suarez has won her last 2 fights by guillotine, and Weili does also look better than ever. The inactivity for Suarez is just too much to overlook. Whether it's due to injuries or not, it only benefits Weili. Juliana Pena aside, who didn't deserve to win in my eyes, the more active fighter usually has more success, and Weili is just too dominant to lose to such a wild card in Suarez. She has damage on the feet, she can hold her own on the ground. I think Weili might prove there's levels to the game and give Suarez her first loss, so I'm taking the underdog in Zhang Weili. And now for the main card, the best fight on this card, to be realistic. For the middleweight belt, we have Dricus Stillknox du Plessis defending his belt as the South African against the man he took it from, the #1 contender, Sean Tarzan Strickland. And Dricus du Plessis is an insanely exciting fighter, but a rematch with one of the most boring in Strickland will cancel out most excitement they've built up. They have bad blood stretching from DDP's comments in their highly entertaining press conference, which DDP won, and their bloody yet indecisive fight where DDP took the belt from Sean Strickland. Du Plessis trains very hard and has looked better in every fight he's been in, while Strickland has a habit of sparring very hard. Let's see how his training's going.
Least favorite race? Oh, that's a good one. My least favorite race? Oh, I'm gonna get canceled. You know, man, the Chinaman. The Chinaman's real bad, you guys.
Anyway, DDP has looked incredible while defending his belt. I picked against him for the Whitaker fight, the Strickland fight, and the Izzy fight. I'll admit it, I was wrong on those. DDP has surprised me at every turn. His form looks terrible, yet he pulls it off every single time. He has an extremely goofy and unorthodox style that somehow works incredibly well, mixing his striking and grappling. Strickland is the complete inverse while fighting, which created an incredibly middling fight last time around at 297, where it was a very split decision. Pretty normal for Strickland's fights. Strickland does have great defense with his variation of the Philly shell. He leans back and blocks a lot of shots with his hands in the way, where he can go and counter after they attack. Funnily enough, the most damage Sean has landed in the last few fights is in the last 5 seconds of fights when he decides to do flying eagle kicks instead of just jabs and teeps, or against DDP in the crowd. He dominated Izzy, but didn't look very explosive against DDP and prioritized his defense in his own title fight. Du Plessis tends to lunge forward and throw leaping hooks, most of which don't get past Sean's guard, but can land damage when they do. Sean also needs to stop begging DDP to stand and bang when DDP is the far superior wrestler. Of course he's gonna wanna wrestle.
Listen, Dutchman, I'm gonna need you to be a man. I'm gonna need you to stand up, not go to your knees, and we're gonna need to strike like men. I know you like to wrestle and you like to choke people out and do some dude, but I'll make a pact with you, you make a pact with me that we stand up like men and we settle this like men.
Du Plessis won the battle on the ground, giving him a ton of points on the scorecards, and Strickland just didn't do enough on the feet to deal major damage. He did beat up his face, however. Strickland needs a huge tactical change. His point fighting style got him to the belt, but if he wants to keep that belt and defend it, He needs to switch up his style of hard sparring to beat the champ and get that belt back. Assuming that won't happen, DDP will win the ground game and survive on the feet to take a decision win again, or as Strickland would call it, a fight to the death. Either way, I'm taking DDP to defend his belt, most likely by a decision, but he did just sub Izzy, who knows. And before we get into my picks, I'll go over my past picks, my lock of the night, something I guarantee to hit. You can take it by itself or throw it in a parlay if you need an extra leg. 15-3, we're gonna get better. My main card picks are 56 and 39, so not terrible, but we will improve. And for my official main picks for the main card, we're gonna start at the bottom, the 170 matchup between Jake Matthews and Francisco Prado. I think Matthews is too experienced to get tricked by Prado's aggressive striking, so we will see a decision win by Jake Matthews. And then another Aussie, this time at light heavyweight, Jimmy Crute, has just been too cold recently, so I'm taking Bellato by knockout. He has been cracked before, but Jimmy Crute is just been on a bad run. And now Justin Tafa versus Teixeira, a heavyweight bout. I'm taking the newcomer Teixeira. He's too big, too tall. Tafa needs to land a lucky hook to knock him out, but Teixeira could and should piece him up from range and hopefully land a huge knockout on the overweight and much shorter Tafa. And now my first underdog of the night is going to be on the co-main with Weili versus Tatiana Suarez. I just think Weili is getting slept on as the underdog. She has looked incredible her last few fights. I think she'll do enough on the ground. I think she's very competent there, and her striking will be much faster and more powerful than Suarez. So we could see a late stoppage, but most likely I'm going to go with a decision win by Weili. And then for the main event, Dricus du Plessis defending his belt against the man he took it from, Sean Strickland. I'm going with du Plessis the first time I picked him to win. I think Sean needs to mix it up, get more aggressive to get that belt back. Du Plessis is the better wrestler. I think he's going to look incredible in this fight, will get his takedowns, but I think his striking will be much improved. And Strickland and his normal Philly shell, jabbing, sparring style will need to get a lot different and much more aggressive if he can finish or beat Dricus du Plessis. And don't forget the prelims. I'm going to be honest, usually I hype up the prelims. I love watching them. This is not a great card. The fight night last week was better. The prelims might be on par with most of these main card picks, but some to watch out for. Cody Steele, great well-rounded fighter, amazing BJJ, fun striking. That will be a very fun fight. And then you have Ilya Topuria's brother and Jack Jenkins to round out the prelims. So it could be worse, but man, this card sucks.
You like Huey Lewis on the news?
You like Cody Steele? His early work was a little too new weight for my taste. My lock of the night is Cody Steele taking the W against Rong Zhu. I love Cody Steele. His grappling is great. His striking is fun. I think Rong Zhu is going to get another loss, even though he also looks very promising. But Cody Steele will get the dub here. And the punchline of the night is going to be the fight to the death for the middleweight belt between Sean and Dricus. Or that's what Sean would call it at least. Most likely it will be a sparring match, but it will still be a great fight for the belt. That will see Dricus defend it again or Sean get his belt back, and has huge ramifications for the future of the division, with Chimaev or Imavov up next.
Because it's not just about the pleasures of conformity and the importance of training. It's also a personal statement about the band itself. Hey, Paul! Ah!
And for the punch bowl, or the best fight of the night, is going to be an axe murder from Teixeira on Justin Tafa. Being such a terrible card, it was a little harder to find a punch bowl, but my vote for the best, most exciting fight of the night is Teixeira versus Tafa. Not great. It's hard to get excited for a lot of the fights on this card, but a 6'7" heavyweight facing off against a fat heavyweight should be pretty fun, at least for a few minutes. So that is it for the video today. Comment down below how you feel about my picks, if you hate them, if you have your own takes, anything. I love to talk to you guys in the comments. Leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe to support the channel, and I'll see you next time.